The telegram fluttered in Tabitha Wilson's trembling fingers as tears blurred the words she'd already memorized. Disowned. One cold word from her father that severed 18 years of family ties. Outside, the Montana Territory sunset painted the sky crimson, but Tabitha couldn't appreciate its beauty as she pressed a protective hand over her still flat belly. April 1878 had arrived with cruel intensity for the 19-year-old. 3 months pregnant, abandoned by the silver-tongued railroad man who'd promised marriage, and now cast out by her God-fearing family in Boston. The westbound train had been her only option, carrying her toward the frontier town of Silver Creek, where her late mother's cousin supposedly lived her last hope for shelter. The train whistle pierced the evening air, announcing their arrival at Silver Creek Station. Tabitha gathered her single valise, straightened her navy traveling dress, and prepared to face whatever judgment awaited her. The small mining town sprawled before her as she descended onto the platform, weathered buildings lining a main street thick with mud and horse droppings, saloons spilling raucous laughter, and curious eyes tracking the arrival of a well-dressed Eastern woman. "Miss Wilson," a gray-haired stationmaster approached. "I'm afraid I have unfortunate news. Martha Jennings passed last winter. Influenza took half the town." Tabitha's knees weakened. "But I've nowhere else to go." "The boarding house might take you in temporarily. 2 blocks down. Ask for Mrs. Holloway." She nodded weakly, clutching her valise tighter. The weight of her circumstances threatened to crush her as she trudged down the muddy street, aware of the stares from miners and shopkeepers. The April evening carried a chill that seeped through her city clothes, unsuited for the harsh Montana climate. The boarding house door was locked when she arrived. A sign declaring no vacancies hung crookedly in the window. Tabitha sank onto the porch steps, the reality of her situation overwhelming her. Homeless, penniless, and with a child growing inside her, the very evidence of her shame. "Madam? You all right there?" The deep voice startled her. She looked up to find a tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. As he stepped closer, his features came into view, a man in his late 20s with sun-weathered skin, dark blonde hair beneath a worn Stetson, and eyes the color of a summer sky. His shoulders were broad beneath a faded blue shirt, leather vest, and duster that had seen better days. "I'm fine, thank you," she managed, though the quiver in her voice betrayed her. He studied her with a thoughtful expression. "Pardon my forwardness, but you don't look fine. New in town?" "Yes." Tabitha wiped away a stray tear. "I was to stay with my cousin Martha Jennings, but I've just learned she passed away." The stranger removed his hat, revealing more of that wheat gold hair. "Martha was a good woman. I'm sorry for your loss." He extended a calloused hand. "Adam Prescott. I run the Cross P Ranch outside of town." "Tabitha Wilson." She accepted his handshake briefly. "I don't suppose you know of any available lodgings or employment opportunities for a woman alone?" Adam frowned, taking in her quality clothing and proper speech. "Not much call for ladies of refinement here. Saloon girls and laundresses are what Silver Creek needs most." He paused. "My ranch housekeeper might know of something. My wagon's just down the street. I'd be happy to take you out there for the night, at least give you a proper meal and safe place to sleep while you sort things out." Alarm crossed Tabitha's features. "Sir, I couldn't possibly. Mrs. Granger's been with me since I was a boy. She runs a tight house and would tan my hide if I left a lady stranded in town after dark." His smile was reassuring. "You'd be under her supervision, proper as Sunday services." Tabitha hesitated, weighing her limited options. Night was falling, and the sounds from the saloons were growing rowdier. The thought of sleeping on the boarding house steps seemed suddenly dangerous. "Very well, Mr. Prescott. I accept your offer of transportation to speak with your housekeeper." She stood, smoothing her skirts. "But I want to be clear that I intend to pay my own way." "Fair enough." He picked up her valise. "Wagon's this way." The ride out of town was quiet at first, the wagon jostling over rutted roads as they left Silver Creek behind. Open country stretched before them, vast and wild under the emerging stars. Tabitha gripped the wooden seat as Adam handled the team of horses with confident ease. "How far is your ranch?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. "About 5 miles. Not too far." He glanced at her. "Where are you from, Miss Wilson?" "Boston." She hesitated. "My father's was a banker." Adam nodded without pressing. Montana's different from Boston. Harder in some ways, but folks tend to judge you more on what you can do than where you came from. Is that so? Doubt colored her words. Mostly. He adjusted his hat. Of course, small towns still love their gossip. The wagon crested a hill, and below them spread the Cross P Ranch, a substantial log house with a broad porch, several outbuildings, a corral, and a barn. Lamplight glowed from the windows, warm and inviting against the growing darkness. It's larger than I expected, Tabitha admitted. Started with nothing 10 years ago. Built it up myself after learning ranching from my uncle. Pride resonated in his voice. Now we run 500 head of cattle and employ 8 hands. He guided the wagon to the front of the house, where a stout woman in her 60s appeared on the porch, wiping her hands on an apron. Adam Prescott, I expected you hours ago for supper. Her stern expression softened when she spotted Tabitha. And who's this you've brought home? Mrs. Granger, this is Miss Tabitha Wilson from Boston. Her plans for lodging fell through. Thought we might help her get situated. The housekeeper's sharp eyes took in Tabitha's travel-worn appearance. Come inside, child. You look dead on your feet. The house interior surprised Tabitha with its comfortable furnishings, a far cry from the rough frontier dwelling she'd imagined. A stone fireplace dominated the main room. Bookshelves lined one wall, and solid wooden furniture crafted with care filled the space. The smell of beef stew and fresh bread hung in the air. Sit yourself down, Mrs. Granger instructed, guiding Tabitha to the dining table. When did you last eat? Yesterday evening, madam, Tabitha admitted. Adam frowned. Get her a plate, Mrs. Granger. I'll see to the horses. As he left, the housekeeper bustled about, setting a steaming bowl of stew before Tabitha along with thick slices of bread and a cup of hot coffee. Eat now. Questions later, the older woman said firmly. Tabitha didn't need to be told twice. The hearty fare was exactly what her exhausted body needed, and she found herself finishing the entire portion. Mrs. Granger sat across from her, her expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. Now then, she said as Tabitha set down her spoon. What brings a Boston girl to Silver Creek all alone? Tabitha stared into her empty bowl. The truth would emerge eventually in a town the size of Silver Creek. Her condition couldn't remain hidden forever. I'm with child, she said quietly. The father was a railroad surveyor passing through Boston. He made promises he never intended to keep. My family. Her voice caught. They've disowned me. Mrs. Granger's expression remained unchanged. And your plan was? My mother's cousin Martha was my only remaining family. I didn't know she had passed. The housekeeper nodded slowly. How far along? 3 months. Adam's boots sounded on the porch, and Tabitha tensed. Mrs. Granger reached across to pat her hand. No need to share your business with the boss unless you choose to, she said quietly. We've got a spare room. You can stay tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure something out. Adam entered, removing his hat and hanging it on a peg by the door. Everything all right? Miss Wilson will take the blue room tonight, Mrs. Granger announced. And I've been thinking we could use an extra pair of hands around here with spring roundup coming. The men's mending is piling up, and these old fingers aren't as nimble as they once were. Tabitha looked up in surprise. You're offering me work? If you can sew and aren't afraid of honest labor, the housekeeper confirmed. Room, board, and a small wage. Nothing fancy, but it'll keep you off the streets. Adam glanced between the two women. Sounds reasonable to me, if Miss Wilson is agreeable. I can sew quite well, Tabitha said carefully, and I'm willing to learn whatever else is required. She hesitated. But there's something you should know before you make this offer. Mrs. Granger shot her a warning look, but Tabitha shook her head. She wouldn't begin this arrangement with deception. Mr. Prescott, I'm expecting a child. Unmarried. She lifted her chin, bracing for the judgment and rejection she'd come to expect. I understand if that changes your decision. Adam's expression remained neutral as he studied her face. Mrs. Granger? I'm aware, the housekeeper said. Doesn't change the fact we need help, and she needs work. He nodded slowly. The offer stands, Miss Wilson. Your personal circumstances are your own business. Relief washed over Tabitha, though she remained wary. You're very kind, but I don't want charity. It's not charity if you're working, Adam replied. And we pay fair wages for honest work on the Cross P. Later that night, in the simple but clean bedroom Mrs. Granger had prepared, Tabitha sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the day's events. The journey west had depleted most of her meager savings, and the future remained uncertain, but for the moment, she had shelter, food, and the promise of employment. She placed a hand on her stomach, whispering to the life within. Perhaps we found a temporary haven, little one. Just long enough to make a proper plan. Sleep came quickly, deeper than she'd known in months. The next morning brought Tabitha fully into ranch life. Mrs. Granger showed her around the main house, explaining her duties, mending the cowboy's clothes, helping with meals, and assisting with the endless cleaning that ranch work generated. The older woman was firm but fair, and Tabitha found herself grateful for the clear expectations. The men stay in the bunkhouse, Mrs. Granger explained. They're decent enough fellows, but they'll be curious about you. Best keep your interactions professional. By midday, Tabitha had settled at the kitchen table with a pile of shirts and trousers in desperate need of repair. Her nimble fingers worked quickly, finding satisfaction in the simple, useful task. Adam stopped by briefly before heading out to check on a distant pasture. Settling in all right. Yes, thank you, Tabitha responded, not looking up from her stitching. Good. He hesitated. Mrs. Granger can be particular, but she means well. She's been very kind. Tabitha finally met his gaze. As have you, Mr. Prescott. He shrugged, seemingly uncomfortable with her gratitude. It's nothing. Ranch this size needs many hands. Over the following weeks, Tabitha fell into a rhythm at the Cross P. She rose early, helped Mrs. Granger prepare breakfast for the ranch hands, worked on mending and household chores throughout the day, and gradually learned the seasonal patterns of ranch life. Spring roundup kept the cowboys busy from dawn until dusk, with Adam often returning long after supper had gone cold. Her pregnancy progressed, the slight swell of her belly becoming more noticeable by her 4th month. She'd taken to wearing her dresses looser, though she knew concealment would soon become impossible. The ranch hands, a mix of young and old cowboys, treated her with respectful distance, tipping their hats when she brought fresh coffee to the porch during their brief rest periods. One evening in late May, Tabitha sat on the front porch, enjoying the cooling air after a hot day. The sunset painted the distant mountains in shades of gold and purple, and the peaceful scene soothed her troubled thoughts. She hadn't realized Adam had returned until he spoke from the bottom step. Beautiful evening. She startled slightly. Yes, it is. He climbed the steps and leaned against the porch post, his tall frame silhouetted against the colorful sky. Mrs. Granger says you're doing well with the work. I enjoy being useful. Tabitha smoothed her skirts self-consciously over her growing middle. Adam noticed the gesture. How are you feeling? With the... He gestured vaguely toward her stomach. Well enough. Morning sickness has finally passed. He nodded, seeming uncertain how to continue. After a moment of awkward silence, he asked, Do you plan to stay in Silver Creek after? I don't know, she admitted. I haven't thought that far ahead. Folks in town will talk, he said carefully. Small communities can be hard on women in your situation. Tabitha's spine stiffened. I'm well aware of how decent society views fallen women, Mr. Prescott. He winced at her sharp tone. That's not what I meant. He removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. I want you to know you have options here. The ranch is far enough from town that you could stay on, if you wanted. We could say you're a widow. I won't build my future on lies, she said firmly. My child deserves better than that. Adam studied her face in the fading light. You've got courage, Miss Wilson. That counts for something out here. Before she could respond, Mrs. Granger called from inside, breaking the moment. Adam replaced his hat and nodded goodbye, leaving Tabitha to ponder their conversation long into the evening. As June bloomed across the Montana landscape, Tabitha's pregnancy became impossible to hide. She'd fashioned maternity dresses from fabric Mrs. Granger had ordered from the general store, and her rounded belly now preceded her into rooms. The ranch hands pretended not to notice, maintaining their respectful distance, but Tabitha felt the weight of unasked questions whenever she ventured beyond the main house. Adam had begun including her in evening conversations, often sharing books from his surprisingly extensive library. She discovered he'd attended 2 years of college back east before his father's death had called him home to Montana, and his knowledge of literature and history matched her own education. Whitman understands the American spirit better than most. He commented one evening as they discussed poetry on the porch, Mrs. Granger knitting nearby as chaperone. The vastness, the possibility. I've always preferred Emily Dickinson, Tabitha replied. There's something powerful in her isolation, her interior world. Adam smiled. Perhaps that's why you're adapting to ranch life better than most city folk. You understand the value of self-reliance. Their conversations became a highlight of Tabitha's days, even as she reminded herself not to form attachments. Her future remained uncertain, and a respectable rancher had no place for a fallen woman with another man's child. In early July, Adam announced he needed to ride into Silver Creek for supplies. Would you like to come along, Miss Wilson? Might do you good to see something beyond the ranch house. Tabitha hesitated. I'm not sure that's wise in my condition. Nonsense, Mrs. Granger interjected. Fresh air and a change of scenery will do you good. Besides, I need things from the mercantile that Adam will surely forget. The decision made for her. Tabitha found herself helped into the wagon the following morning, a list of needed items tucked into her pocket. Adam drove carefully, avoiding the worst bumps in the road. Thank you for being considerate, she said, noting his efforts. My mother lost 2 babies before carrying me to term, he replied quietly. I remember how careful my father was with her during those times. The simple statement revealed more about Adam's character than hours of conversation had done. Tabitha studied his profile, seeing the kindness that had always been there, but now understanding its roots. Silver Creek had grown since her arrival 3 months earlier. The railroad construction had brought more workers, and new buildings were going up along the main street. Adam helped Tabitha down from the wagon in front of the general store, his hand warm and steady at her elbow. I need to see the blacksmith and check on some cattle sales, he explained. Will you be all right here for an hour or so? Of course. She smoothed her dress, conscious of how clearly it displayed her pregnancy. I have plenty to occupy me. Inside the mercantile, Tabitha found herself the object of curious stares from the women of Silver Creek. She kept her head high as she selected thread, needles, and the other items on Mrs. Granger's list, but couldn't avoid hearing the whispers. Working out at the Prescott place. Condition is obvious. Wonder if he's responsible. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as she approached the counter. The storekeeper's wife, a pinch-faced woman in her 40s, barely looked at Tabitha as she tallied the purchases. Will Mr. Prescott be settling the account? She asked coldly. Yes, he mentioned you keep a running tab. Tabitha struggled to keep her voice steady. The woman sniffed disapprovingly. Indeed. Though I must say, Mrs. Hartford's sewing circle was quite surprised to learn Adam Prescott had taken in a woman in your situation. Tabitha clutched the edge of the counter. My employment at the Cross P Ranch is a private matter. Nothing stays private in Silver Creek, miss. The woman's eyes narrowed. A man of Mr. Prescott's standing has a reputation to consider. The most respectable rancher in the county, taking in is there a problem here, Mrs. Delaney? Adam's voice cut through the conversation as he entered the store. The woman's demeanor changed instantly. Not at all, Mr. Prescott. Just filling Miss Wilson's order. Good. His tone was cool as he moved to Tabitha's side. Are you finished, Miss Wilson? She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Adam quickly settled the account and escorted her outside, his hand at the small of her back providing silent support. I'm sorry, he said once they were away from the store. I should have anticipated the gossip. It's not your concern. Tabitha blinked back tears. But perhaps it would be best if I found other arrangements soon. Your reputation, hang my reputation. The vehemence in his voice surprised her. The opinions of small-minded people don't matter to me. They should, she insisted. You have a business to run, connections to maintain. Adam helped her into the wagon before climbing up beside her. Instead of taking up the reins, he turned to face her. Tabitha. It was the first time he'd used her given name. Do you know why I built my ranch so far from town? She shook her head. Because I value my privacy and the right to live by my own principles, not the judgment of others. His blue eyes held hers intently. You and your child are welcome at the Cross P for as long as you wish to stay. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. Thank you, she whispered. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, but the silence between them had transformed into something comfortable, almost intimate. Tabitha found herself stealing glances at Adam's profile, wondering how she'd been fortunate enough to find such kindness in a world that had shown her so little. August brought brutal heat to Montana, making Tabitha's advanced pregnancy even more uncomfortable. She was nearing her 7th month, her belly now a prominent dome beneath her dresses. Despite the discomfort, she continued her duties, though Mrs. Granger insisted she rest frequently. No sense working yourself into an early labor, the housekeeper admonished one particularly hot afternoon. Sit on the porch with this lemonade and shell these peas. That's contribution enough. Tabitha complied, grateful for the slight breeze that stirred the air as she worked. The ranch hands were out with the cattle, and Adam had ridden to a neighboring property to discuss grazing rights. The peaceful solitude was broken by the arrival of a buggy coming up the long drive. As it drew closer, Tabitha recognized Mrs. Hartford, the banker's wife and leader of the town's social circle. Beside her sat Reverend Phillips, Silver Creek's Methodist minister. Anxiety knotted in Tabitha's stomach as the buggy stopped before the house. "Good afternoon," she called, setting aside the peas. "May I help you?" Mrs. Hartford, a plump woman draped in black despite the heat, surveyed Tabitha with undisguised disapproval. "We've come to speak with Mr. Prescott on a matter of community concern." "He's not currently available," Tabitha replied, one hand instinctively moving to her belly. "Perhaps you could return tomorrow? Our business concerns you as well, Miss Wilson." Reverend Phillips stepped down from the buggy, helping Mrs. Hartford descend. "May we come inside?" Mrs. Granger appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "What's all this, then?" "Church business, Mrs. Granger," the Reverend explained. "We won't take much of your time." The housekeeper's eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside. "Very well. But Miss Wilson's condition requires care, so I'll thank you to keep it brief." In the main room, Mrs. Hartford refused to sit, standing rigidly as she addressed Tabitha. "Miss Wilson, we've come out of Christian concern for your immortal soul and Mr. Prescott's reputation." Tabitha remained seated, her back straight. "That's very thoughtful, but unnecessary." On the contrary, Reverend Phillips interjected. "Your situation has become the subject of considerable talk in Silver Creek. A young unmarried woman in your condition, living under the roof of a bachelor rancher, surely you understand how this appears." "Miss Wilson works for me," Mrs. Granger stated firmly, "and lives under my supervision." Mrs. Hartford sniffed. "Nevertheless, the arrangement is improper. We've come to offer a solution." "Indeed." Tabitha's voice was cool. "There's a home for fallen women in Helena," Mrs. Hartford explained. "They take in unfortunate girls like yourself, provide proper medical care for the birth, and arrange for the child's adoption by a respectable family. Afterward, you could return east with your reputation somewhat restored." The suggestion struck Tabitha like a physical blow. "You want me to give up my baby?" "It's the Christian thing to do," Reverend Phillips said gently. "The child deserves a proper family, and you deserve a chance to rebuild your life without this burden of shame." "My child is not a burden or a shame," Tabitha responded, her voice trembling with emotion. "And I have no intention of abandoning him or her to strangers." Mrs. Hartford's expression hardened. "Then you leave us no choice but to speak plainly. Your presence here is damaging Mr. Prescott's standing in the community. Several prominent citizens have already questioned his judgment in harboring a woman of questionable virtue. That's quite enough." Adam's voice cut through the room as he strode in from the kitchen, his expression thunderous. He must have returned through the back door, unnoticed during the confrontation. "Mr. Prescott," Mrs. Hartford began, "we were just explaining. I heard what you were explaining, and I'll thank you to leave my property immediately." His tone left no room for argument. Reverend Phillips tried again. "We're only concerned for Miss Wilson's welfare and your reputation." "My reputation is my own concern," Adam interrupted. "And Miss Wilson's welfare is perfectly secure under my roof." "People are talking, Adam," Mrs. Hartford insisted. "They're saying the child might be yours, that you've hidden her away out here to conceal your own indiscretion." Tabitha gasped, but Adam's expression remained impassive. "Let them talk," he said coldly. "Now please leave before I forget my manners entirely." After the unwelcome visitors had departed, Tabitha sat trembling on the sofa. Adam knelt before her, his face etched with concern. "Are you all right?" No, she admitted. I'm not. They want to take my baby. That won't happen, he assured her. Not while you're under my protection. The word protection hung between them, laden with meaning. Tabitha searched his face, finding only sincerity in his blue eyes. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Taking such risks for someone you barely know? Adam hesitated, then spoke quietly. Because I know what it's like to be judged by circumstances beyond your control. My mother was half Shoshone. After my father died, the same respectable citizens tried to run us off our land, claiming a half-breed woman had no right to a white man's property. His jaw tightened at the memory. We survived because a few good people stood by us when it mattered. Tabitha reached out impulsively, covering his hand with hers. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me to judge people by their character, not by gossip or circumstance. He turned his hand to clasp hers. You've shown nothing but courage and dignity since you arrived here. That's what matters to me. Their eyes held for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Mrs. Granger cleared her throat from the doorway, breaking the spell. Supper's nearly ready, she announced. And Miss Wilson needs rest after that unpleasant business. September brought cooler temperatures and increasing anxiety as Tabitha's due date approached. Dr. Simmons from Silver Creek had visited twice, confirming that both mother and baby appeared healthy, but warning that first births could be unpredictable. Everything seems normal, he'd assured her. But send for me at the first signs of labor. Adam had grown increasingly protective, ensuring that someone was always nearby in case Tabitha needed assistance. He'd even postponed a cattle drive to Billings, sending his foreman instead so he could remain at the ranch. It's not necessary to rearrange your business on my account, Tabitha protested one evening as they sat on the porch. It's entirely necessary, he countered. Besides, Jenkins needed the experience of leading a drive. Mrs. Granger had stepped inside to fetch her knitting, leaving them momentarily alone. Tabitha shifted uncomfortably on the wooden chair, seeking a position that would ease the pressure on her back. Here, Adam said, noticing her discomfort. He fetched a cushion from inside and helped position it behind her. His hands lingered a moment longer than necessary, warm against her shoulders. Thank you, she murmured, suddenly aware of his proximity. He remained standing beside her chair. Tabitha, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you. Her heart quickened at his serious tone. Yes. After the baby comes, I hope you'll consider. He paused, seeming to search for words. That is, I want you to know that your position here is secure. Permanent, if you wish it. That's very generous, she replied carefully. It's not generosity. Adam moved to face her, crouching down to meet her eyes. These past months, getting to know you. I've come to care for you, Tabitha. More than I should, perhaps. She stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. Adam, I'm carrying another man's child. I know. His gaze was steady. And I'll love that child as my own, if you'll let me. What are you saying? She whispered. I'm saying that I want you to stay, not as my employee, but as my wife. He took her hands in his. I know it's sudden, and I know you might not feel the same, but they'll shame you. She interrupted, tears filling her eyes. They'll shame you for the baby. Adam's expression softened as he reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. Then shame me with you. I'd rather face their judgment together than lose you to protect some notion of respectability. Before she could respond, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen, causing her to gasp and clutch her belly. Tabitha. Alarm filled Adam's voice. I think. She tried to catch her breath as another pain followed. I think the baby's coming. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of pain and fear for Tabitha. Mrs. Granger sent a ranch hand galloping for Dr. Simmons while she prepared the bedroom for delivery. Adam paced the hallway, his face etched with worry each time Tabitha's cries reached him through the closed door. When the doctor arrived, he quickly assessed the situation. The baby's coming fast for a first birth, he told Mrs. Granger. Everything looks normal, but she'll need all her strength. Through waves of pain that seemed endless, Tabitha clung to the memory of Adam's proposal. His words gave her something to focus on beyond the agony of childbirth, a future to reach toward. Mrs. Granger stayed by her side, wiping her brow and offering encouragement. You're doing beautifully, the older woman assured her. Just a little longer now. Just before dawn, With a final push and a cry that seemed torn from her very soul, Tabitha brought her daughter into the world. The baby's lusty wail filled the room, strong and defiant. A perfect little girl, Dr. Simmons announced, cleaning and wrapping the infant before placing her in Tabitha's trembling arms. Exhausted but overwhelmed with love, Tabitha gazed down at her daughter's tiny face. The baby had a dusting of dark hair, and, when she briefly opened them, eyes of deepest blue. "She's beautiful," Tabitha whispered. Mrs. Granger smiled, tears in her eyes. "Adam's been wearing a path in the floorboards. Shall I let him in?" Tabitha nodded, suddenly nervous. What if his proposal had been impulsive? What if the reality of another man's child changed his feelings? The door opened slowly, and Adam entered, his face drawn with concern that melted into wonder as he approached the bed. He knelt beside it, gazing at the infant nestled against Tabitha's breast. "You have a daughter," Tabitha said softly. "She's perfect." His voice was thick with emotion as he gently touched the baby's tiny hand. The newborn reflexively grasped his finger, holding on with surprising strength. Tabitha watched his face, searching for any sign of hesitation or regret. She found only tenderness and something deeper that made her heart race. "Did you mean what you said?" she asked quietly. "Before. About marriage." Adam raised his eyes to hers. "Every word. More so now." He glanced down at the baby, who still clutched his finger. "She needs a father who'll love her unconditionally. I want to be that man, if you'll have me." "They'll talk," Tabitha warned, though her heart was already decided. "They'll say you married me out of pity." "Let them talk," he replied, echoing his words from weeks before. "We'll know the truth." He leaned forward, brushing a tender kiss across her forehead. "I love you, Tabitha Wilson. You and this little one." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "I love you too." Mrs. Granger cleared her throat from the doorway. "Well, it's about time you two figured that out. I've been watching you dance around each other for months." Dr. Simmons chuckled. "I can perform the ceremony myself, if you'd like. I'm also the town's justice of the peace." 2 weeks later, with autumn painting the Montana landscape in rich golds and reds, Tabitha stood on the porch of the Cross P Ranch in a simple cream-colored dress, baby Grace sleeping peacefully in Mrs. Granger's arms nearby. Adam waited for her at the bottom of the steps, handsome in a new black suit, his hair neatly combed and his eyes filled with love. The ceremony was small, just the ranch hands, Dr. Simmons, and to everyone's surprise, Reverend Phillips, who had arrived that morning with an apology and an offer to assist with the wedding. "The Lord's teachings are about love and redemption, not judgment," he'd explained. "I was reminded of that by several members of my congregation who spoke highly of both of you." As Tabitha descended the steps to join Adam, she felt none of the shame that had haunted her for months. Instead, she was filled with a profound sense of coming home not to a place, but to a person who saw her clearly and loved her completely. "Ready?" Adam asked, offering his arm. "Ready," she confirmed, taking it. They spoke their vows beneath the vast Montana sky, promising to face whatever came good or ill together. When Dr. Simmons pronounced them husband and wife, Adam gathered Tabitha in his arms and kissed her with such tenderness that several of the hardened cowboys turned away, suspiciously wiping their eyes. Mrs. Granger brought little Grace forward, placing her in her mother's arms. Adam wrapped his arms around them both, his family now complete. "Mrs. Prescott," he murmured against Tabitha's hair. She smiled up at him. "Mr. Prescott." That evening, after the small celebration had ended and Grace was sleeping soundly in her cradle, Adam and Tabitha stood on the porch of their home, watching the stars emerge over the Montana wilderness. "No regrets?" he asked, drawing her close against the autumn chill. "None," she assured him. "This may not be the life I imagined, but it's better than anything I could have dreamed." Adam kissed her then, beneath the vast canopy of stars, sealing their bond with a promise that needed no words. Whatever judgment the world might offer, they would face it together, their love a defiance against anyone who would shame them for choosing each other, for choosing family, for choosing love above all else. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing the Cross P Ranch in pristine white by mid-November. Tabitha stood at the window of the main house, 3-month-old Grace nestled against her shoulder, watching as Adam directed the ranch hands in securing the barn against an approaching blizzard. Her heart swelled with pride and love as she observed her husband, a word that still sent a thrill through her when she thought it. The past months had transformed her life in ways she could never have anticipated when she'd stepped off that train in Silver Creek. Instead of shame and rejection, she'd found acceptance and love. Instead of struggling alone, she was surrounded by family, not by blood, but by choice. Grace stirred against her shoulder, making the small, contented sounds that never failed to melt Tabitha's heart. She kissed the top of her daughter's dark head, inhaling the sweet baby scent. "Your papa will be in soon," she murmured. "He promised to read to you tonight." The door opened, bringing a swirl of snowflakes and cold air as Adam stomped his boots on the threshold. His cheeks were ruddy from the cold, his breath visible in the chilled air. "Storm's coming in faster than expected," he announced, removing his coat and hanging it by the door. "Jenkins and the boys have everything secured." His expression softened as he approached Tabitha and Grace. "How are my girls?" "Missing you," Tabitha replied with a smile. "Grace has been watching for you at the window." Adam chuckled, reaching for the baby, who turned toward him with recognition in her blue eyes. "Is that so, little one? Been keeping an eye on your old pa, have you?" Grace rewarded him with a gummy smile as he cradled her expertly in his strong arms. The sight still amazed Tabitha, this rugged rancher so gentle with the tiny life they both cherished. Mrs. Granger left stew warming on the stove. Tabitha said, "Are you hungry?" "Starving." He leaned down to kiss her, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing between them. "But first, I have news." They moved to the sofa before the crackling fire, Grace content in Adam's arms as he shared his updates. Letter came from the cattle buyer in Chicago. "They're offering 20% more than last year for our spring herd." Pride colored his voice. "And the new grazing rights are secured for the north pasture. The cross pea is growing." "Tabitha." "That's wonderful," she said, genuinely pleased. Adam had worked tirelessly to build his ranch into one of the most successful in the territory. "You should be proud." "We should be proud," he corrected. "This is our legacy now, yours, mine, and Grace's." His expression grew more serious. "Which brings me to something I've been meaning to discuss with you." Tabitha tilted her head questioningly. "Oh, I want to legally adopt Grace," he said, looking down at the baby who was now drowsily playing with a button on his shirt. "Make her officially a Prescott in name as well as in my heart." Emotion swelled in Tabitha's throat. Though Adam had been a devoted father since Grace's birth, this formal acknowledgement meant everything. "Are you certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything," he assured her. "She's my daughter in every way that matters. I want it recognized by law." Tabitha leaned against him, overwhelmed with gratitude for this man who had changed her life. "I'd like that very much." "Good." He smiled, shifting Grace to one arm so he could wrap the other around Tabitha. "There's more, though." "More?" "Mrs. Hartford came by the cattle office today." His tone held a hint of amusement. "Seems the Ladies' Aid Society is organizing a Christmas pageant and dinner. They'd like us to attend, all three of us." Tabitha pulled back in surprise. "The same Ladies' Aid Society that wanted to send me away to a home for fallen women?" "The very same." Adam's eyes twinkled. "Apparently, being the wife of one of the territory's most successful ranchers has changed their perspective on your suitability for polite society." "How convenient for them," Tabitha remarked dryly, though without real bitterness. The past months had taught her that others' opinions mattered far less than she'd once believed. "I told her we'd consider it," Adam continued, "but that our attendance would depend entirely on you. If you're not comfortable, we'll have our own Christmas celebration right here." Tabitha considered for a moment. Once, the approval of women like Mrs. Hartford had seemed vital to her sense of worth. Now, secure in Adam's love and their family, such approval seemed trivial by comparison. "I think we should go," she decided. Not for their approval, but to show Grace that her family stands proud together. No shame, no hiding. Adam's face filled with admiration. "Have I mentioned lately how much I love you?" "Not in the last few hours," she teased. A terrible oversight. He leaned in to kiss her again, more deeply this time. Grace chose that moment to protest, squirming between them with a small cry of indignation. They broke apart, laughing. "Someone's jealous," Adam observed, kissing the baby's forehead. "We're hungry," Tabitha suggested. "Let me feed her while you have your supper." Later that night, with Grace sleeping peacefully in her cradle and the blizzard howling outside, Tabitha lay curled against Adam in their bed, savoring the warmth and security of his embrace. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured, stroking her hair. "How different my life is from what I expected," she replied honestly. "A year ago, I was a banker's daughter in Boston with a very narrow view of what my future would hold." "Regrets?" he asked, echoing the question he'd posed on their wedding day. "Not one." She traced the line of his jaw with her finger. "I wouldn't trade this life, our life, for all the social approval in Boston." Adam captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Nor would I, though I do wonder sometimes." "What?" "About the man who fathered Grace," he admitted. "Not with jealousy, but with a strange sort of gratitude. His abandonment led you here, to me." Tabitha considered this perspective, so different from the shame and betrayal she'd initially felt. "I hadn't thought of it that way. But you're right, every step of my journey, even the painful ones, led me exactly where I was meant to be." "With me," Adam affirmed, drawing her closer. "With you," she agreed, settling into his embrace as the storm raged harmlessly beyond their walls. On Christmas Eve, the Cross P Ranch house glowed with warmth and celebration. Pine boughs adorned the mantelpiece, their fresh scent mingling with the aroma of roasting turkey and Mrs. Granger's famous apple pies. A small tree stood in the corner, decorated with paper stars the ranch hands had helped cut out and strings of cranberries Tabitha had painstakingly threaded. The entire household gathered in the main room: Adam and Tabitha, Grace in her christening gown, Mrs. Granger, and the 8 cowboys who called the Cross P home. Even Dr. Simmons had ridden out from town to join them. Adam stood before the fireplace, Grace balanced on one arm, the other wrapped around Tabitha's waist. "Before we head into town for the Christmas service," he announced, "I wanted to take a moment to celebrate here, with our ranch family." He looked around at the gathered faces. "This year has brought many changes to the Cross P, all of them for the better. Tonight, we have one more to share." He nodded to Dr. Simmons, who stepped forward with an official-looking document. "The Territorial Court has approved Adam's petition to legally adopt Grace as his daughter," the doctor explained. "From this day forward, she is officially Grace Prescott, with all the rights and privileges thereof." A cheer went up from the ranch hands, and Mrs. Granger dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief. Tabitha felt tears of joy spill down her cheeks as Adam handed Grace to her, so he could sign the final papers with a flourish. "It's official," he said, returning to embrace them both. "We're a family in every sense of the word." The celebration continued as they traveled into Silver Creek for the Christmas Eve service. The little church was packed with townsfolk, lamplight glinting off evergreen decorations and red ribbons. As the Prescott family entered, Tabitha felt the eyes of the congregation turn toward them. This time, however, the stares held curiosity and respect rather than judgment. Adam guided his family to a pew near the front, his head held high. Tabitha followed with equal dignity, Grace sleeping peacefully in her arms despite the murmurs around them. Mrs. Hartford approached before the service began, her expression conciliatory. "Mrs. Prescott, we're so pleased you could join us tonight." Her eyes lingered on Grace. "What a beautiful child. She has your complexion." "Thank you," Tabitha replied simply, accepting the olive branch for what it was. The service was beautiful, filled with carols and candlelight. When Reverend Phillips spoke of the Christmas story of a child born in humble circumstances who would change the world, Tabitha felt the words resonate deeply within her. She glanced down at Grace, then up at Adam, finding his eyes already on her, filled with love. Afterward, the congregation gathered in the church hall for the Christmas dinner. Tabitha was surprised to find herself welcomed into conversations by the same women who had once shunned her. They admired Grace, complimented her dress, and asked about life at the Cross P with genuine interest. "You've quite transformed Adam," Mrs. Delaney from the general store remarked. "He used to barely speak 2 words when he came to town. Now look at him smiling and introducing his daughter to everyone." Tabitha followed her gaze to where Adam stood proudly showing Grace to a group of ranchers. "We've transformed each other," she replied softly. As the evening drew to a close, snow began to fall again, dusting Silver Creek in fresh white. Adam helped Tabitha into their sleigh, tucking warm blankets around her and Grace for the journey home. "Ready, Mrs. Prescott?" he asked, climbing in beside them. "Ready, Mr. Prescott," she replied with a smile. As they glided through the snowy night, bells jingling on the harness and stars brilliant overhead, Tabitha reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had arrived in Montana territory frightened and alone, carrying what she believed was her shame. Instead, she had found a home, a family, and a love strong enough to withstand any judgment. "Penny for your thoughts," Adam said, guiding the horses along the moonlit trail to the ranch. "I was thinking about that day on your porch, when I told you they'd shame you for the baby," she admitted. He chuckled softly. "And I said to shame me with you. Did you mean it?" Even then, Adam's gaze was steady in the moonlight. "I meant every word. And I'd say it again today, tomorrow, and every day for the rest of our lives." Grace stirred beneath the blankets, making a small sound of contentment before settling back to sleep. Tabitha looked down at her daughter, then up at the man who had chosen to be her father, and felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. "I love you, Adam Prescott," she whispered. "And I love you, Tabitha Prescott," he returned, leaning over to seal the words with a kiss. The sleigh continued through the silent, snow-covered landscape, carrying them home, a family forged not by convention or expectation, but by choice and by love, stronger than any shame the world could offer. Spring came early to Montana in 1879, bringing with it fresh beginnings for the Prescott family. The meadows surrounding the Cross P Ranch burst into wildflowers, cattle grazed on new grass, and 8-month-old Grace took her first tentative steps across the ranch house porch, squealing with delight as she tottered from Tabitha's outstretched hands to Adam's waiting arms. "That's it, sweet pea," Adam encouraged, his face alight with pride as Grace collapsed against his chest, giggling at her accomplishment. "Soon you'll be riding with your pa?" "Not too soon, I hope," Tabitha laughed, moving to join them. She sat beside Adam on the porch step, leaning into his side as he wrapped an arm around her. "Let me enjoy her being my baby a little longer." "She'll always be your baby," he assured her, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Even when she's running this ranch someday." Tabitha smiled at the thought. In just 1 year, her life had transformed completely. The shame and uncertainty that had once defined her future had given way to confidence and purpose. The Cross P was thriving under their joint management, Adam handling the cattle and ranch operations, while Tabitha kept the books and corresponded with buyers. Grace had become the heart of the ranch, adored by everyone from Mrs. Granger to the roughest cowboys. She had Adam's blue eyes and determined spirit, combined with Tabitha's dark hair and thoughtful expression. Though she carried no Prescott blood, she was unmistakably her father's daughter in the way she watched him work, mimicking his gestures and expressions. "Letter came from Boston," Adam mentioned, bouncing Grace on his knee. "From your sister." Tabitha's heart quickened. 6 months ago, she'd finally written to her younger sister Margaret, the only family member she thought might respond. "What did she say?" "Didn't open it," Adam replied, pulling the envelope from his shirt pocket. "Thought you'd want to read it first." With trembling fingers, Tabitha broke the seal and unfolded the pages covered in Margaret's neat handwriting. As she read, tears filled her eyes. "She's coming to visit," she whispered. "Father doesn't know she's writing to me, but she's 21 now and has her own inheritance from our grandmother. She wants to meet Grace and see our life here." Adam squeezed her shoulder. "That's wonderful news. She says she never believed Father was right to cast me out." Tabitha wiped away a tear. "She's been saving her money for over a year to make this journey." "We'll make her welcome," Adam promised. "Show her that the wild frontier isn't so wild after all." Tabitha smiled through her tears. "Or maybe show her that it's exactly wild enough to be free." That evening, after Grace had been tucked into her crib, Tabitha and Adam sat before the fire, discussing plans for Margaret's visit. The gentle intimacy of these quiet moments was something Tabitha cherished: the easy conversation, the shared dreams, the knowledge that whatever challenges arose, they would face them together. "I've been thinking," Adam said, tracing patterns on her palm with his thumb. "With the ranch doing so well and Margaret coming to visit, perhaps it's time we expanded our family." Tabitha's breath caught. They had discussed having more children someday, but hadn't set any timeline. Are you suggesting we try for another baby? His smile was tender as he nodded. Grace should have siblings to grow up with, and I'd like to see you carrying our child. The thought sent a warm glow through Tabitha. I'd like that too. Adam pulled her closer, his kiss deepening with promise. Then perhaps we should start practicing, he murmured against her lips. Tabitha laughed softly, leading him toward their bedroom. Perhaps we should. Margaret Wilson arrived in Silver Creek on a bright June day, stepping off the train with wide eyes and city clothes remarkably similar to those Tabitha had worn on her own arrival 15 months earlier. At 21, she was the image of Tabitha, the same dark hair and delicate features, though with a more sheltered innocence in her expression. Tabitha, she cried, rushing into her sister's arms. Oh, I've missed you so. The sisters embraced tearfully, years of separation dissolving in an instant. When they finally parted, Tabitha introduced Adam and Grace, who watched the newcomer with curious blue eyes from her father's arms. So this is the famous Grace, Margaret said, reaching out to touch the baby's chubby hand. She's beautiful, Tabitha. Truly beautiful. Would you like to hold your niece? Adam offered, already transferring Grace to Margaret's arms. The baby studied her aunt seriously for a moment before breaking into a wide, gummy smile that melted Margaret's heart instantly. Oh, she's wonderful. She has that effect on people, Adam said proudly. Let's get your trunks loaded. Mrs. Granger has been cooking all day in your honor. The ride to the ranch gave Tabitha a chance to see her home through fresh eyes as Margaret marveled at the vast landscape. It's so open, her sister kept saying. So free. That's what I love about it, Tabitha admitted. There's room to breathe here, room to become whoever you truly are. Margaret squeezed her hand. You seem so different, Tabby. Stronger somehow. Happier. I am. Tabitha looked ahead to where Adam drove the wagon, Grace secure in a small carrier beside him. I found my place in the world, even if it's not where I expected to be. Father was wrong, Margaret said quietly. About everything. The way he treated you. It changed things at home. Mother barely speaks anymore, and I couldn't stay silent any longer. Is that why you came? Tabitha asked. Because of Father? Margaret shook her head. I came because you're my sister, and I love you. And because... She hesitated. Because I wanted to see if there might be a place for me here too. Tabitha stared at her in surprise. You want to stay in Montana? Perhaps, Margaret admitted. Boston feels so stifling now, all those rules and expectations. The way they treated you showed me how quickly they'll turn on anyone who doesn't conform. I want something different for my life. Ahead of them, the Cross P Ranch came into view, the sturdy main house with its wide porch, the bunkhouse, barn, and corrals spread across the rolling landscape. Cattle dotted the distant hillsides, and the mountains provided a majestic backdrop. It's beautiful, Margaret breathed. It's home, Tabitha said simply. Margaret's visit stretched from the planned 2 weeks into a month, then 2. She took to ranch life with surprising enthusiasm, learning to ride from Adam and helping Tabitha with Grace. Her city manners gradually gave way to a more relaxed demeanor, and her pale complexion gained healthy color from days spent outdoors. Jenkins can't stop staring at your sister, Adam commented one evening as they watched Margaret chatting with the young foreman by the corral. Should I be concerned? Tabitha smiled. Margaret can handle herself. And Jenkins is a good man. One of my best, Adam agreed. Still, she's only been here 2 months. Sometimes it doesn't take long to know where you belong, Tabitha reminded him, thinking of how quickly she had fallen in love with both Adam and the Cross P. By August, Margaret had made her decision. Over dinner one evening, she announced her intention to remain in Montana. I've written to Father, she explained. I've told him I'm staying here to help Tabitha with Grace and the ranch. He'll be furious, of course, but I'm of age and my grandmother's inheritance gives me independence. You're welcome to stay as long as you wish, Adam assured her. This house has plenty of room. Actually, Margaret said, a blush coloring her cheeks, Jenkins has asked me to consider a position as the school teacher in Silver Creek. The town is growing, and they need someone with proper education to teach the children. Tabitha exchanged a knowing look with Adam. And is that all? Jenkins asked. Margaret's blush deepened. He may have mentioned that the teacher's cottage is quite small, but that he's building a larger house on his claim just outside town. Jenkins is an honorable man, Adam said, his tone serious though his eyes twinkled. But perhaps I should have a conversation with him about his intentions toward my sister-in-law. Perhaps you should, Margaret agreed, then broke into a smile. Though I believe his intentions are exactly what I'm hoping for. Later that night, as Tabitha nestled against Adam in their bed, she marveled at how life continued to surprise her. Did you ever imagine we'd have my sister living in Silver Creek, possibly courting your foreman? Life has a way of working out in unexpected ways, he replied, his hand coming to rest on her stomach. Speaking of which, Tabitha placed her hand over his. I was going to tell you tomorrow. How did you know? You've been glowing the past few weeks. And Mrs. Granger mentioned you've been turning a bit green at the smell of coffee in the mornings. His voice was tender as he asked, Are you happy about it? Overjoyed, she assured him, turning in his arms to face him. Our child, Adam. A little brother or sister for Grace. His kiss was gentle, reverent. Thank you, he whispered against her lips. For what? For coming to Silver Creek. For staying. For loving me. For our family. His blue eyes shone in the moonlight filtering through the window. For everything. As winter settled once again over the Montana landscape, the Cross P Ranch stood as a testament to the family that had built it, not just a family of blood, but one forged through love, choice, and the courage to defy convention. In the main house, before a roaring fire, Adam sat with Grace on his lap, reading her a story while his free hand rested protectively on Tabitha's growing belly. Nearby, Margaret and Jenkins, now officially engaged, played a game of checkers, their laughter mingling with the crackling flames. Outside, snow fell softly, covering the land in pristine white. But inside, warmth and love created a haven against any storm, a place where shame had no power, where family was defined by love rather than conformity, and where a journey that had begun in desperation had led to the truest happiness Tabitha could have imagined. They'll shame you for the baby, she had once cried, her heart breaking with fear. Then shame me with you, Adam had answered, his love stronger than any judgment the world could offer. And so they had built their life together, Adam, Tabitha, and Grace, soon to welcome another child into their growing family. Not a life without challenges or occasional disapproval from others, but a life rich with love, purpose, and the quiet dignity that comes from choosing one's own path. As Tabitha watched her husband and daughter, her hand resting on the new life growing within her, she knew with absolute certainty that she had found her place in the world, not despite the journey that had brought her here, but because of it. Every step, even the painful ones, had led her home. To the Cross P Ranch. To Adam. To the family they had created together. To love.